Awesome. Great to be here on this panel with you guys. Super fun.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I've kind of been interacting with a lot of you guys very early on. I think some of you even before, before some of the projects that you're working at today existed, which is crazy to see. So maybe first of all, congratulations on all the success. I think you guys all deserve it, and I can't wait to see where it all goes from here.
Thank you.
But yeah, so maybe to kick it off, maybe you guys could all introduce the projects you're advising or working on, just for the audience so that they can get to know it.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Edward, and I'm a senior advisor for Project Serum. And Serum provides the underlying liquidity infrastructure for projects building on Solana.
My name is Will. I'm co-founder at Jet. We're a borrowing lending protocol built on Solana. Built from the ground up on Anchor with some novel features like liquidations on Serum.
Yeah.
And I'm Grace. I'm one of the co-founders of Orca, which is the friendliest and most lovable AMM in the Solana ecosystem. I think many of you will have used us to swap before, but if not, totally encourage you to just try it out. I think it'll be an experience you really love.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So I might dive kind of straight in here. I think I'm kind of curious. There's one thing I kind of want to start on is liquidity, and I think Serum takes this really interesting approach with liquidity, whereby it tries to do a completely consolidated on-chain source of liquidity or on-chain order book for the entire ecosystem. And whereas Orca, for example, takes a more traditional model, which is what we're more familiar with in terms of having the liquidity tied to specific protocols itself or tied to Orca itself. So I'm curious, can you guys talk me through how that's worked out? Also, some of the trade-offs there and the pros and cons you've seen from trying to go to market and the last few months while you guys have been live.
Yeah, sure. Happy to kick it off. So with Project Serum, it's unique because it's the first fully on-chain central limit order book and matching engine on Solana, and this is a big deal for people in DeFi, especially traders who look at this kind of architecture and see the immediate value in that this is the way the global financial system prefers to interface, or this is the way the world prefers to interface with the global financial system. And the pros to liquidity, as you said, it's unique because we have these set of order book markets sort of in the center, and different decentralized applications can compose with that order book, such that an order on, let's say, Radium could actually get matched completely with an order on Bonfida, even though they're separate, completely separate dApps. But it's also led to interesting design choices because, on the one hand, yes, we're this DEX component for spot and for SPL tokens. We're also building out the new Serum core, which will allow for this matching between any arbitrary financial or non-financial asset, and that's an incredible improvement to this matching service. But projects that came in the beginning, and this is still happening now, sometimes they see Serum, they want to compose with it, but they require certain tweaks to the architecture, maybe they want permission markets, or maybe they're trying to build something more complicated like borrow lending or derivatives, and it's difficult to build that kind of stuff on SPL tokens sometimes if you're forced to tokenize positions that are ultimately multi-dimensional. So they come to the Serum contributors, the Serum core development team. They're like, hey, we would love to use your matching service and be part of this base liquidity layer, but we need certain changes to Serum. Otherwise, we're not able to build out what we need to build out. So it's been a lot of, I don't want to call it hand-holding, but definitely a lot of coordinating between different teams and having to decide, okay, they're building this kind of product. This is very exciting, and we want to help them as much as we can. And it gets into some very nitty-gritty, low-level detail, but despite the time it may take and the effort, I think it's very much worth it. And we look forward to a huge subsection of the Solana universe, not just spot, but complex products, borrow lending, margin services, and other such applications, all sort of building on Serum and letting everything bottom out at the order book layer.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks. And I imagine taking the L approach allows you guys to be a little bit more nimble and a little bit more flexible with Orca, right, Grace?
Well, I wouldn't actually say that Orca is trying to have the liquidity tied to the protocol itself, and that we are also trying to build this super useful and super easy to use DeFi Lego that others can use to plug into our liquidity, right? And that's something that we've already started to see with tons of developers starting to use the open Orca TypeScript SDK.
That's awesome.
I think we just reached our 1,000 downloads on NPM, and our devs like Scuba and Meep, who go by their tags, have been doing a really incredible job. And we've been starting to hear from a lot of other projects that they've really loved using it, and they're like, this is some of the nicest code that we've seen so far. And so whereas with Orca, we're really proud to offer this super simple, super approachable interface, I think the other side of that is allowing the whole ecosystem to build on top of our liquidity. And so in that sense, I think both AMMs and central limit order books are totally valid choices that have various trade-offs. And so what we want to offer is really just the whole ecosystem, the opportunity to plug into whichever works best for them.
Awesome, yeah. And for Jet Protocol being a borrow lending protocol, does that tie into how you guys design the protocol or design Jet itself, having both of these as options and trying to design something that specifically optimizes for some of these new primitives?
Yeah, it definitely does. Also, what got me into Solana was Serum, because you get a central order book. And
right.
I mean, on Ethereum, you have a bunch of like pooled lending models, and coincidentally, that's what we made at Jet, a pooled lending model. But also, like, there's a lot of stuff to develop, and you have to learn how to develop on Solana and Rust. So it was just like the primitive we got out the door first, and I really like the I think pooled lending model is not the best model for Serum or for Solana, because it's a totally different virtual machine. But I think of it like that, like borrowing lending can operate in like a, like I'd say tranched, I guess. You could have permission markets. You don't necessarily have to pull everything in one account. But yeah, I mean, having access to both, like just to do swaps like an AMM is perfect, and like central, like limit order books, like the liquidation is an example. We post limit orders on the order book.
Oh yeah.
You can control the price. Like, you can't do that with an AMM.
Yeah.
But on Serum you can. You can just like define the order.
Right. And what about rebalancing? Do you do that through the AMN or through the order book, or a mix of both, depending on whichever offers like a better spread or better execution?
So we'll just go to an AMM on our liquidator bot, which isn't even part of the protocol. Like, it could be any AMM.
Yeah.
And then we also will just do the Serum swap. It checks the best rate and it finds that. For bigger orders, like, it's usually you'll find Serum probably give you the better rate, but like, you don't want to like slam a big order through an AMM. So
makes sense. So one thing I've been thinking about a bit and having a few conversations about is kind of open source development. And this is a little bit tangential to DeFi, but I think I've seen a lot of DeFi projects, or a few DeFi projects, decide to kind of launch closed source. And the reasoning is, I think, fear of attack vectors and just security. And the other one is just that I think some teams still believe that technology itself is a moat. I'm curious how you guys think about that, and because all of you are all open source protocols, basically, if I'm not mistaken, and whether you think that's given you specific advantages, or how that's played out for you within the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think there's a few values at play here, right? I mean, why go open source? But if we're talking about decentralization, we're talking about a trustless system ultimately, then you want verifiability, and you want to not have to embed more trust into the system where you may not want it, right? It's about trust minimization in the end. But that being said, I think there's a pretty cool history with Serum, because back in the day, the Solana ecosystem was just a few dApps. I mean, there was Serum. There wasn't too much else. There's a lot to bootstrap at the very beginning, and I guess under the Serum umbrella, there was a few things, right? We had the DEX component. We had like a few GUIs that people could pick up and use and spin up their own state-of-the-art Serum-based DEX if they wanted. We also had Anchor, which has been very helpful for many developers, and we're glad to see that. There's been the public RPC infrastructure, a lot of things under Serum, but I guess what I want to emphasize is that Serum's always been open source since day one, and we've had all these repositories of different tooling for developers, like the Solana wallet, Solid, the very first wallet. had to be created because in an ecosystem where you had to bootstrap everything and get people to be able to trade, someone needed a wallet. But the idea isn't to have the Serum contributors take over the wallet space. No.
Yeah.
Solana was created because we wanted to inspire other wallets like Solflare and Phantom. And I say we've done a good job.
Yeah.
We look forward to deprecating Solid in the same way we've deprecated, the first Serum AMM that wasn't sending orders to the order book, but that's okay because we need those primitives, those prototype primitives to first be there to bootstrap everything, and having them be open source was critical for that mission.
Yeah.
I think open source is critical for a new blockchain. I mean, I think they don't do this on Ethereum. They never did. And I mean, I was hacking around in Ethereum for like 5 years, and I would always go look at code bases of other protocols and learn, like see how they do things and improve it. And there was that culture there. It's definitely not at Solana. Everyone's like, most people have closed source code, but like the point was like, a lot of devs like learn from other people's code bases. Like I think most people don't realize how like important that is. So I'm like of the opinion you should definitely open source. Like you just put it all out there. There's people raise security concerns as well, but like I don't know. I think that's not like I think it's sort of a cop out. And we developed Jet on Anchor, open sourced it, really put a lot of work into the code base, like hoping that other people would look at that and be like, we like these code patterns, so like we really think we should use these in our protocol, like, and then we find like the secure code patterns that work, like Open Zeppelin in Ethereum, which is like just a set of tested code patterns that have been audited and they get updated frequently, and you can trust those generally, like they're secure. Yeah, you can just like drop those in your code base and know they're going to do what they're going to do. You're not going to get like shoot yourself in the foot. We don't have that at Solana. I mean, they're sort of developing it slowly, but it's not a huge like open source culture on Solana. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I really respect the work that you guys are doing and doing everything open source. I'll be open with you. At Orca, the token swap smart contract that we're built on top of is open source. Our SDK is open source. Our front end for now is still closed source. And we also have a yield farming smart contract that until now is closed source. And the honest reason for that is not because we don't believe in the mission of open source, which we absolutely do, but because the Solana ecosystem is so freaking competitive. And open sourcing takes time. You got to do it right. You got to do due diligence. And with things moving like a million miles an hour, that's a hard trade-off to make.
100%,
Ultimately, our goal is to open source all of the code that we write at Orca, but we need to do it at the right time in order to support our long-term mission of providing the best AMM for the ecosystem.
That makes a ton of sense. And how do you think we could better do that? Is the barrier just a little bit high early on because the developer tooling isn't quite there and it takes more time to kind of get to the right level of polish and right level of confidence compared to, say, developing on, say, Ethereum today? Or do you think it's just generally just a matter of time and the fact that it's a competitive landscape?
I mean, I think there's some amount of best practices getting in place that will help, but the availability of audits is, I think, another main pain point that everybody in the ecosystem feels. It's getting better, but until it's easy to get an audit in a reasonable period of time, I think it's hard to expect people to be super willing to throw out unaudited code out there.
Yeah, completely agreed. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for the feedback. And I'm also excited. I do think I definitely agree with Will in the sense that this rapid evolution of what we know today as DeFi was a massive byproduct of the fact that a lot of projects were open source and were able to build on top of and iterate on top of each other very, very quickly. Yeah. And we've seen that to some degree on Solana today. Like I think not just Solana, but other L1s have just seen a ton of Ethereum clones come across and rebuild some of the same verticals. And I do think that maybe open source and encouraging this kind of behavior will allow us to kind of get past that barrier and really start to innovate and build things that are specific for Solana or whatever other ecosystem it is. The other thing I really like about some of the protocols here, or all three of your projects, is that I feel like each of you have done something kind of unique that uniquely takes advantage of Solana itself. So can you talk me through that a little bit on what you think some of the highlights there are from your protocols?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things I think are pretty big wins for Serum this year.
Yeah.
One would be the sort of launch of the Serum portal. And basically what this is like, I mean, people on Twitter were calling it the Solana App Store.
Right.
I guess that's a pretty apt description. But unlike an app store where there'll be, sponsored places for market, it'll be decentralized. But the idea is to have a platform and the first gateway into the Solana universe. Because I think one of the big differentiating factors between CeFi and DeFi is, if you go on CeFi, there's a pretty, they focus so much on user experience and intuitiveness that you're offered like a single point of access, and you start off in one platform. You have access to all the products that you'd want, especially if you're talking about financial services. You don't get too much of that with DeFi right now. I know people are building dashboards and aggregators, but even among them, there's multiple dashboards to choose from. And I can just imagine anyone who's not DeFi native coming into the scene, they'll just be overwhelmed with all the choices out there. So the thinking behind the Serum portal is to showcase all of the incredible dApps that are building on Serum. Right now we have all the major Serum-based GUIs and swaps listed there, but we look forward to farms and wallets and even derivatives being categorized there, as well as very in-depth Solana and Serum data analytics. But another more lower level thing I just want to talk about real quickly,
Sure.
especially especially in terms of leveraging Solana's capabilities, is the creation of permission markets on Serum.
Right.
So with the Serum order book, you have all these different markets, but when we talk about permission markets, it does sound a bit anti-DeFi or a bit controversial, but the idea is to create more freedom and more flexibility for people building on Serum, so that when you list a custom market or you list a specific market, you're the authority for that market. You can actually control who specifically can trade within that market, or who can also list that market. You can also control the fee structure. So if someone wants to also list that market, they get permission from you, they can do so, and they earn only a portion of the fees. And it's extremely important, because if you think about this from sort of the economic point of view, let's say you're taking on a bunch of regulatory risk and a lot of effort trying to list something like fixed income or tokenized equities. Let's really push down to the pedal here.
Yeah.
You go through all that regulatory risk to list something like tokenized equities. Do you want someone else to see everything you've done and say, "Oh, we're going to list the same market"?
Right.
Or would you rather be able to build that moat around what you build out?
Right.
And this has been a nuanced but extremely, I think, important update for Serum.
Okay, that's awesome. Looking forward to how that gets utilized. How about yourself, Will?
So beyond our MVP, which we released a month ago, when we were developing that, we bumped up into like the transaction size limit on Solana, and you can't do things like double two hop swaps, because you don't have enough accounts.
Yeah.
And we were like looking at this from I came from Ethereum, and I was like, this is how you do it there, but it's not how you do it on Solana. It's a totally different virtual machine. Quite like it though, really big fan. So we just changed our position. We were like, well, what would be the best thing we could build, on sea level? And yeah, we tackled the problem that way, and without doxing the product we're building right now. Yeah, we put a lot of effort into it, and it's sort of the same mindset that Serum took. Was we've never seen a central limit order book on chain.
Yeah.
And you've never really seen these market primitives really operate on Ethereum, because Ethereum's a terrible chain for it. It's just the EVM is just I don't know, the worst VM ever. But yeah, we were sort of tackled it well, what are the market structures in the real world? Where you can build that on Solana. It's that's what we're building right now, and it's it's in the spirit of what Serum did.
Yeah.
And it's sort of my entry into Solana came from Serum. So it's kind of a pay homage type of situation.
Got it.
Means a lot to us. Thank you.
Yeah. But also the C ratios you're offering, you can do that with a little bit more confidence, because you have, I guess the risk factor is lower. You can rebalance quicker, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
That should be interesting, because it's a very tangible competitive edge.
Yeah, and liquidations itself, you want to make sure that you can do those fairly, like they do on centralized exchanges, right?
Yep.
Centralized exchanges are very good at this. They don't they don't just like knock out one person. They like take the top and like kind of cycle through it. So no one just like, so there's not like a dip and like one person is just like, why did my account get liquidated? And everyone else just like hanging out. Like, so like these kind of things we're building into the protocol. Like, you know, you want to make like a really good user experience, like like you know, the big crypto exchanges have. So
Sure. Awesome. Thanks. And yourself, Grace?
You know, Solana's performance is pretty freaking metal, right? I think like everyone looks at Serum, like we were really inspired by that. Like the technology is incredibly complex, but actually what that enables is these incredibly simple user experiences, right? And so I think that's something that's been really magical about Orca and the journey for us. Or like my co-founder Yutaro is very deep in Ethereum. He's been in the space for a long time, whereas I actually came in with more fresh eyes, having a background in more traditional engineering and design. And so I remember first starting to use these experiences on Ethereum and being like, why is this all so incredibly unusable? Like, I don't know how much I'm going to pay. I don't know if I even have enough to pay for this. Like, how long am I going to wait? And Taro's like, I don't know, just like hang out for a few minutes. I was like, you just want me to hang out for a few minutes and see if I'm going to be paying the $50 for this transaction or not? And so like when we got to Solana and started to build Orca, I think the goal here was really just to build a product that I would want to use and that like our users would want to use independent of the underlying like technology. I think too much of DeFi until now has been designed primarily for constraints and like the UX reflects and makes those constraints very available to people to see. Whereas now we can start to build these experiences that black box the technology a little bit and then really just provide that simplicity and like a really easy on-ramp into DeFi for people who might have been too intimidated by all of the raw technology before. You know, it's like the open a box before where all the gears were out there and now you can just like use the product.
Yeah. No, I've always loved the focus that you and your team have had on UI and design. It's really refreshing. So
it's been an honor.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much today, guys. Really enjoyed the chat. So catch up with you guys later on. But
definitely.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.